For today are to discuss why many businesses are actually small businesses and why those businesses often fail. We'll identify assistance available for those small businesses. We'll also discuss the advantages and disadvantages of franchising. We'll outline the forms of business ownership that exist, and we'll also talk about what happens when businesses join forces. So to start, let's talk about why this matters. The way a business is formed as a legal entity has implications far beyond the business itself. Did you know if your business fails and you cannot pay your business debt, your creditors, the money you owe them, that you can lose your home, your car, and even some of your personal belongings? Or if you select the wrong legal form of ownership, you can find yourself in a position of owing a large sum of money to the IRS. Did you realize that if your business has not been formed in a way that protects you if someone slips and falls on site, that you could be personally liable for their pain and suffering? Let's learn more about what type of legal ownership works for the business then. Many people, when they hear the word business, they think about some of the large businesses we talked about earlier in the course, some of those Fortune 500 companies that you often hear about in the news or that you might actually be a customer for. Small businesses are actually a really strong engine, though, in our United States economy. Most businesses you'll find are a small business. So how do we define the difference between these traditional businesses we think of and a small business? The Small Business Administration defines a small business to be a firm that's independently owned and operated, and generally it won't be very dominant in the field. You'll see this very commonly with things such as restaurants, construction work, and some service positions as well, as you see pictured on the screen. Now, interestingly, a lot of these small businesses are actually also considered home-based businesses. What that means is that their owners, as you see this woman on the couch, own and operate the business out of their home rather than a separate office location. This can be very advantageous for a number of reasons. First of all, you can have a huge cost savings in what it would cost to rent the space you might need to be working from home. You can also have some advantages in terms of cutting down on commute time. Now, if you're driving an hour to and from work every day, that's an extra 2 hours on your work schedule. Whereas if you can get started in a home office, it's a 1-minute walk over to the office, that's going to save you ample time. Home-based businesses can also work really well in terms of the ability to save money on things like internet that you might have at your home anyway. And so really it can be a good situation if it's a small business that fits well for a home-based business. But not every business this is going to work, and there's definitely some things you can consider that are disadvantages to being home-based. First of all, if you see clients regularly, it can be unprofessional to see them in your home. Even if you do see them in your home, you may need to keep your home very, very, very clean, which not all of us are great at. Also, there can be safety concerns. If I know many lawyers who see clients who are not always thrilled with what's going on, and them having access to and knowing where you live personally can have implications as well. On top of that, being home-based can be very secluding for the person because they're not going to an office, they're not able to meet other people, network, and so you're doing a lot of that virtually, and there can be some disadvantages to that as well. Try to think if you can think of any more advantages or disadvantages of working at home. Now, small businesses, as we've said before, make up a large part of our United States economy. They create a lot of new jobs. We talked in our global business overview about how the United States is such a large exporter. Small businesses actually make up almost 1/3 of our U.S. exports. They're also able to offer very customized services because they have fewer clients they're working with. And they can even create new industries. In that way, they encourage innovation. We see a lot of small businesses starting with new ideas that help drive our economy in creative ways. Unfortunately, many small businesses are very likely to fail, though. You'll see in the first couple of years, 3 in 10, almost 1/3 of the businesses opened, close permanently. Half of them will generally close within 5 years, and by that 10-year mark, 82% of all small businesses will close. That means it's more likely than not that within a 10-year period, the business will close down. What are some reasons that you think businesses fail? One of the major reasons small businesses fail is cash flow. Okay, while you might have the money to get the business up and going, let's say it's a clothing business and the machine that makes the clothing, suddenly breaks on you and it's going to be, $100,000 to fix it. You just might not have the funding after you've already stretched yourself so thin to get, an office space, to get employees, and a lot of the other costs that are often associated with starting a new business. Another reason small businesses fail is a lack of business acumen. The person might be excited about being a baker and very good at making baked goods, but they could have very little business experience and make mistakes that could be really fatal to the business itself. Hopefully, as you're learning more about introduction to business and perhaps pursuing a business degree, you'll learn more about some of the things to avoid that type of circumstance for yourself. Small businesses can fail because it might be that there just wasn't a really great demand for it. Now, you thought that you had this amazing idea and you start up a business and it turns out that there's not a big customer base willing to pay for that product. And there are a number of reasons why businesses can fail, and obviously it's very likely based on this data here, but still many, many small businesses do exist today and are successful in doing so. Because of those failure rates, it's important to talk about some assistance that's available for a small business. Especially if you think you might start a small business one day, it'd be important to take down some very special notes in this area, because you might find yourself a few years from now going, what was that I learned in class? Now I think I want to start a business. This is really where you want to get started. You'll see in the picture on the screen it says, of course it's only $1, it's a small business loan. Really, you're going to need a lot more money than that. So let's talk about some of the sources of financing that a small business could have. As I mentioned before, cash flow is generally a big issue with small businesses, and it is very expensive to get a small business off the ground. Therefore, they rely very strongly on debt financing. Now, one term that's interesting to be familiar with is what we call trade credit. This concept means that you purchase goods or equipment from a supplier who finances that purchase by delaying the date of payment. Going back to our clothing store example, it costs a lot of money to get the store. Okay, often you might have to pay a few months' rent in advance, which can be expensive, perhaps a security deposit just for the store itself, and then you need to pay to get the store decorated. You need to pay for things like the shelving. You need to pay for the people to put that shelving in. And then you actually need the clothes so you can sell them. So often with trade credit, you'll actually get a supplier to give you the clothing. They'll say, here, take this stack of shirts. Let's pretend it's 100 shirts, okay, in various sizes. We're going to give that to you almost on a loan, assuming you'll be able to sell them. You'll be able to gain some revenue from that, and then you can return that to the supplier. The idea there is that the supplier is really trusting you're going to be profitable in your business, so they're willing to give you what you need to get the business up and running, giving you those clothes so you have something to sell so that you can then give them some of the profits. And so we see that very commonly. You'll see on the screen, just going to zoom in here, small business financing pie here. So bank loans can make up a large part of that. Okay, and you'll see credit cards can be another large part, and any other type of merchant cash advances, something similar to what we see with trade credit. Really, when we talk about bank loans, it could be a small business loan or it could just be a personal loan. I know many small business owners who find it easier and faster to simply get out a loan in their own personal name and use that to help with some of the expenses that connect with the business. It can be time consuming to get some of the loans we'll talk about that are backed by the Small Business Association as well. And so this is something where, often small business owners will reach out to family and friends. If you have that luxury, sometimes it's easier to get a loan from a friend or family member or to use a credit card, even if the interest rate is rather high, if you think, hey, the business is going to be successful and I can get these loans repaid. Unfortunately, if things don't go the way you plan them to, you'll find yourself in substantial debt. So it's important to think about what you really need to get the business up and running. What are the necessities? How can you minimize those costs until you have a good profit coming in so you don't find yourself in so much debt that the business shuts down? Now, we talked about the Small Business Administration, the SBA. The SBA offers a variety of services that help small businesses in a significant way. First of all, they assist in the development of a business plan. It's fantastic. You can go on their website, noted here, and they'll actually just walk through the different pieces of the business plan, asking you questions, and ultimately coming out with a free business plan, which is very, very helpful. We'll learn more about business plans soon and why they can be important for small business owners. Now, they also provide what's called a loan guarantee. Be careful with this. A loan guarantee is not a loan. The SBA is not a bank, like Bank of America. What it is a guarantee. They provide a guarantee to banks like Bank of America that if they give you a small business loan, they're saying, here's the loan you need of $100,000 for your clothing store. Bank of America gives you that $100,000 loan. The SBA is saying, we guarantee that we'll pay it if you fail to. So if I take out a $100,000 SBA loan from Bank of America has less risk in giving me that loan, so it makes them more likely to give it to me, so they give me the $100,000, and if for some reason my business does fail, things do not go well, the SBA is guaranteed that they will cover that cost. To obtain that loan, then there's a lot of paperwork and it can be very time consuming, which is why sometimes business owners elect to go another route. It also assists in disadvantaged business owners. So different types of groups who have been discriminated against in the past, it tries to provide extra support to, like women and minorities. It also helps in accessing government contracts. Our federal government will post opportunities for businesses to do work for them. Let's say they need to have a leadership training. They'll post that in what's called a request for proposals online, and that's something that you can look up on bizops.gov, and you can see different opportunities that are available if you want to be involved in government contracting. They do set aside a number of contracts specifically for small businesses, and the SBA is there to help with that. Now, I am going to click on the SBA site just so you can take a quick look at some of the information that they do have. So you'll see under funding programs, they have some loan information here, grants that are available depending on the type of business. Over here under the business guide, this will be most helpful for you. You'll see all sorts of material to help you plan and fund your business, things like calculating your startup costs, again, writing a business plan, looking at the market and figuring out if there is that demand and what type of competition exists, helping with the location, the structure we'll talk about today, the name, the ID numbers, all the kind of things that might be helpful to you as you're working on a business. So if you know anyone or if you are someone who is interested in starting a business, I really encourage you to take a look at this site. You'll also see information about federal government contracting, as we were talking about earlier. You'll see under the Learning Center here a variety of online courses available at no cost if you're looking for additional information to learn about your business and how to get it up and running. There is also local assistance, so you'll see regional offices that exist, some specific to different groups that are considered disadvantaged. And on top of that, you'll see these different SCORE or small business development centers that are available. And depending on your location, you'll find that there are people there volunteering to help get your business off the ground and answer questions for you, which is important. It's nice to hear about things from people who are volunteering and get some extra guidance, because it's hard to just know everything about getting a business off the ground. And so it can be good to consult with one of these different offices. Again, these are all free services, so there's no harm in taking advantage of those available to you. For instance, there is a SCORE in the Rockville Library in downtown Rockville, which is only about a mile from the Rockville campus of Montgomery College. And you can also click on this link here to find other centers that are available. Okay, so lots of great material available for you. Now going back to our overview, we saw some of that specialized assistance we see on the website. Here are just some fast links to find out a SCORE near you or a small business development center near you, as we were just discussing. Now, another important term to be familiar with, beyond the debt financing, the loans that you take out that have to be repaid, usually there's some type of fee involved, which we often call interest. where you're paying to borrow money, to use the money, either to a bank, could even be to a family or friend. Equity financing is different. Equity financing, you're not taking out a loan. It's not something that you have to repay in the same way you think of debt. In equity financing, we see venture capital, that money is invested in a small business by another business firm or a group of individuals or one individual, simply for an ownership share. It does not require the kind of repayment you see with debt financing and loans. A great example of this is Shark Tank. If you've watched Shark Tank before, you'll see on this show, they provide funding. Let's say you need $100,000 and they ask for something in exchange. So yes, I'll lend you $100,000. That's what you need to get your business up and off the ground, but I'm going to take 25% of the profits. So let's say you get your business going, you have the $100,000, and things don't go so well, there's $0 in profits. They get 25% of $0. Even if you're not great at math, you know $0, well, that's not very much money. However, if things go really well, they're making $1 million as a business. The person who invested and asked for 25% back, suddenly they're seeing $250,000 for giving you that original $100,000 loan. That's a big return on a loan of that size. So there can be an advantage, but there's still a little bit of risk for the equity financing side of it. They're providing you that money, and it's in exchange for the opportunity to have a piece of your profits, and they're risking the fact that you may not have any. So they need to evaluate, do they think the business will be successful? And if so, how successful? What's the market like for this? So some of you may be interested in this show Shark Tank if you have not seen it before. You'll see, I'm going to just zoom in so you can see that a little better. For the best and worst Shark Tank pitches, where they're pitching their business and trying to get this equity financing, there's a great link here. You'll also see a quick clip I'm going to show you to help try to remember equity financing and to help illustrate that concept.
I'm seeking $40,000 for 15% of my company. College is expensive. I know, I'm a student. The cost of college rises every year, and students and parents are forced to take out student loans to pay the bill. This puts many students in insurmountable debt. But there is an alternative, scholarships. The only problem is these scholarships are extremely hard to find. This causes millions of dollars in free money to go to waste, as many students don't know this money exists. So that's why I created Scholly. Scholly is a mobile app that matches students with hundreds of potential scholarships. You simply input some information about yourself, such as the state you live in, your GPA, and press match. And there you have it, a list of scholarships you qualify for, literally in minutes. Scholly isn't just a business, it's my passion. I want to help students like myself find money to go to the college of their dreams. So investing in Scholly means that you too can make some dreams come true. So let's do this.
I'm going to do something I've never done before. I haven't heard a whole lot, but I'm going to make you an offer right now.
Awesome. Let me just ask some real questions, okay?
My offer right now is the 40K for 15%. I believe in you. I believe in what you're doing is good. I think that we will make it together, so I hope you just say yes.
I would love to hear other offers, Lori, and I really appreciate that.
Look at me. I believe in what you're doing. I don't care about how we're going to monetize it. I just want you to take my hand and say, deal, and we will make it work. But I'd like you to do it right now.
So there you got the opportunity to see a clip from Shark Tank. I chose that specific clip because it's interesting to see a student who's created a business that helps students in helping you find scholarships that are not attached to the universities you may be attending. So I hope some of you checked Scholly out, but going back to Shark Tank, it shows you an example of their Lori offering $40,000 in exchange for 15% of the company. Of course, there's usually a lot more questions about what the company's doing and their strategy there, but it gives you an idea of what equity financing is. Again, remember that distinction between debt financing and equity financing is that in debt financing, there is something you need to repay, usually with that extra fee, that interest, whereas with equity financing, the money is being provided to you in exchange for the opportunity to take a piece of that profit. Now, one more piece of financing information I like to share when we talk about small businesses is this idea of crowdfunding. It's relatively new, but this concept is a really large part of how small businesses get their funding today. It was actually 18% of US giving as well in 2013. A lot of fundraising is done through this method. So in crowdfunding, donations are actually raised by text, email, social media, direct mail, and even in person. There are a number of different sites that help with this. The idea here is instead of getting $40,000 from Lori, you get 40,000 people to provide $1. In doing so, you have all these individuals who want to support a business able to provide a smaller piece of the puzzle, and if they really believe in it, they're not taking on as much risk, they're not providing as much, but because so many of them are doing so, it gives that business what they need to get up and running. For instance, with the Scully app, you might have seen the person list this on the Kickstarter site, and on the Kickstarter site then, you or me or any other type of student might be willing to provide some funding, let's say $5 in exchange for free access to the app at all times. Right now there's a small fee for that app, so that can be useful. Please be careful if you choose to use these sites. GoFundMe can be a better site for donations, and same with Mobile Cause. Kickstarter actually doesn't just take every single project, they'll choose which projects they're willing to list. And so if you choose to use these sites to list projects and try to do some crowdfunding, just be aware of the fact that these sites often take a little piece of what you've earned. There's a percentage that they'll take, and so you want to make sure to read the terms carefully and understand what that percentage might be. Now we're going to talk a little bit about franchising. Under this setup, there's a franchisor, a company that sells the franchise and grants a franchisee, it's the buyer of that company, the right to use a brand name and to sell those goods and or services. You'll see Subway pictured on the screen. Subway is a great example of a franchise. And we know Subway's name, you've likely seen it before. Subway is something that generally will be owned by an individual like you or me, but when we each walk in, you wouldn't necessarily know that. Walking into Subway, those sandwiches are going to be very similar from location to location. So you'll see some consistency in the branding, you'll see some consistency in the products and services being provided. Why would you then choose to do a franchise? Okay. Franchising supports almost 20 million jobs. It's responsible for over $2 trillion in economic output each year. With a very uncertain economy and increasingly tough job market, many are considered the latest opportunities in franchising. So for more information, you can take a look at this link. Some of the advantages to choosing a franchise are that you get the benefits of knowing, hey, there's a kind of specified profit. If you're thinking about opening a Subway in Rockville, Maryland, you can find one down the road and see what their financials have looked like for a long period of time, and that can help you make a less risky choice but still be able to own your own business, in that you'll kind of know what the profits could look like from a similar location. You also get some of the advantages of things like the marketing. They're going to have nationwide commercials that will then support your franchise, and some more business guidance and support. So it's a way to open your small business and minimize some of the risk of doing it on your own. However, you'll pay for that. So usually there's what we call royalty fees you'll pay to the parent company, which is Subway, the franchisor. And so it is going to be something where you have to decide, will there be a benefit? They're still going to kind of be a boss, and I'm still going to have to pay a little bit in order to operate my business, and is that something that interests me? Okay. There are thousands of franchises, many of which are very familiar. Subway is one of them, McDonald's, 7-Eleven might be one you recognize, Holiday Inn, Budget Car Rentals, and even Jiffy Lube. So I encourage you to take a look at some of the franchises out there. But let's talk a little more about the risks and the benefits of a franchise. Before we jump into that, I do just want to point out entrepreneur.com. That's where you can find some of those possible franchise opportunities. Okay, entrepreneur.com. So risks and benefits of franchising. From a franchisee's perspective, you'll see many advantages on the screen. We talked about a few of these already. Things like marketing expertise. You might get assistance in terms of technical and managerial work. opportunity to really learn the business from people who have done it and done it well. There's quality control standards that'll be in place, more ease of entry into the market then, because there is some brand recognition. Customers know the name, and there can be opportunity for growth as well. Again, there's probably going to be some fees, those royalty fees, possible profit sharing. You do have some restrictions. If McDonald's insists all locations are open 24 hours, you'll suddenly find yourself having to do so, even if that isn't something that interests you. You might have expectations of the support you'll receive from the parent company that may be unsatisfied. And then some of the performance of other people who own the franchise can hurt your name. If someone's putting out sandwiches at Subway that are really not great at one of the locations, it can build a reputation that impacts the others. Now, from a franchisor's perspective, it can help provide some expansion when you don't have a lot of capital. It provides a lot of sources of capital. It controls the expansion of the company, and you have motivated people who are helping to really grow the business. It can cause issues with maintaining control, you're sharing profits, and there can be a lot of potential for disputes with those franchisees. Now we're going to move on to talk a little bit about the legal forms of business ownership. So we've talked about small businesses, we've talked about owners getting small businesses off the ground, some assistance available to them, how you might finance those, and then even the idea of starting a franchise as your small business rather than your own. Now we need to talk about how you structure the business as well. Okay, so let's walk through some of the business forms. The first type of business form to be familiar with is what we call a sole proprietorship. This is a business owned by only one person. It's the most common form of business ownership. It accounts for about 72% of all United States businesses. You are the business. Any money borrowed by the business is loaned to you personally. Even more important, the sole proprietor bears unlimited liability for any losses or debts of the organization. However, it's the easiest and cheapest type of business to form. Some of the advantages you'll see is that you don't have to actually file any paperwork. As soon as you start having a dog service and getting customers who are paying you to walk their dogs, you own a sole proprietorship, you own a business. A partnership's similar, but instead of one person, you'll see two people or more involved. Okay? About 10% of U.S. businesses are partnerships. The impact of disputes can be lessened if the partners have executed a really good partnership agreement, and I highly recommend that. When there's two of you and you disagree about a path forward, even if you're close friends or you've always worked well together before, you can run into a problem. Okay, someone has to be the winning vote. And so I usually recommend that you decide how you're going to handle disputes, especially if there's an even number. You choose who's going to be that final vote. And it might be that you agree to go meet with a third party, and you might even designate who that third party would be. You really want to make sure you're clear on your partnership agreement, even if it's your friend, your family, because things come up you just might not think of. Let's say business is going well. There's $100,000 in profit, and you want to take that money and use that on your own personal gain. And your partner may say, hey, let's put that back into the business. We need to buy new equipment, or we should expand. So having differences in how you spend the money, possibly on an employee, whether or not to hire or fire an employee, there can be some big decisions that you might disagree on once they come up, and it's hard to foresee those things until they happen. You don't want to run into a situation where you're having big disputes with your partners. It's going to impact your ability to be productive in the business. Having a partnership is like a marriage, so you really want to be careful about who you get into partnership with and the type of business that you're doing, and that you're very clear on the expectations for everyone involved. Keep in mind, each partner here is going to be liable not only for their own actions, but also for the actions of the partners. So again, you really want to know who you're going into business with. Now, a limited liability partnership is organized to protect those individual partners from the personal liability we've talked about. Negligent acts of other partners or employees we want to be protected from. We want to make sure that they're not personally liable for the debt of the organization. However, to become a limited liability partnership, you have to file with SStat, the State Department of Assessments and Taxation. You'll see the link for Maryland's here, and generally there's going to be an annual registration fee. Now, it's not usually a ton of money. In Maryland, it's a few $100s, but it is still a fee that you're paying to form and register that business with the state. However, you do get the protection against the business going after your own bank account. If you have $50,000 in your bank account for Joe specifically, and then the business doesn't go well and they're 50,000 grand in debt, technically they shouldn't be able to go after Joe's bank account. So it helps protect you personally from that liability. A C corporation is a legal entity that's entirely separate from the parties who own it. They account for about 18% of all U.S. businesses, but generate about 82% of the revenues. They make up a big part of the business field in the United States. Generally, they'll be owned by shareholders who invest money in the business by buying shares of stock. They'll often receive a dividend, a little bit of money on a regular basis in exchange. You do get that limited liability protection that we talked about. An S corporation is very similar. You avoid double taxation. It limits that personal liability we've spoken about. But there's some limitations. The company must have no more than 100 shareholders. All shareholders are individuals, estates, or certain nonprofits or trusts, and are U.S. citizens. They have to be permanent residents of the United States. The business cannot be a bank or insurance company, and profits have to be allocated based on percentage ownership. Finally, a limited liability company. In this type of business, an LLC, the owners are called members rather than shareholders and are not personally liable for the debts of the company. Again, it limits the liability to you as an individual to have a limited liability company. Its earnings are taxed only once at the personal level. Therefore, you eliminate that possible double taxation you can see in other business forms. It can have as many members as it wants or as little as one member. Its members don't have to be U.S. residents or citizens, and you can distribute profits in any way that you want. So an LLC can be a little more flexible if you are going to go ahead and file and register. You'll see on the screen here a few more details with regard to each of the different legal business forms we've discussed today. You'll see the definition here, okay, some more information about it. Let me see if I can zoom in so you can see a little better. The definition, it talks more about the liability and then the advantages and limitations that we talked about just now. I encourage you to take a look at both what we talked about just a moment ago and these handouts to make sure that you understand some of the distinctions between these different business forms. I have an activity to make sure that you understand some of the key highlights from the distinctions between the different business forms. This has to do with Lisa and Bart starting a small business selling lemonade called Lemon Sweet. On the first slide, the business starts. Lisa and Bart design a lemonade stand and put a sign out that Lemon Sweet is open for business. They're charging $2 per glass. They have a great first day. They sell 20 lemonades. What type of business is Lemon Sweet on day one and why? Hopefully you answered that this business is a partnership. Okay, the two people came together, so there's more than one person as there would be in a sole proprietorship. They've started a business and they haven't had to do any paperwork to do that. Now remember, the disadvantage here is that there could be some liability. If someone gets sick from their lemonade and sues them, they could be going after Lisa and Bart's personal bank accounts. So let's move forward. The business is profitable. Lemon Sweet has really taken off, and Lisa and Bart decide to start investing in a better lemonade stand, a website, business cards, and some local advertising. Lisa's a little nervous about the $10,000 her and Bart are about to invest and what will happen if Lemon Sweet fails. What type of business form would you recommend to help address Lisa's concerns and why? Hopefully you answered a limited liability partnership or corporation, which would limit the risk to Lisa and Bart's personal assets like the $10,000. Now on the last screen, you'll see the business expansion. Lemon Sweet is doing so well that both Lisa and Bart would like to expand and open more locations to hopefully continue to grow their profit. Lisa and Bart want to maintain the same branding and quality of the original location. However, they don't want to be responsible for every new location. They are open to allowing others to open Lemon Sweet locations, and they plan to take a 10% royalty fee. What type of business form is this and why? Hopefully you answer that this is an example of franchising, where Lisa and Bart will be the franchisors of Lemon Sweet, and they'll allow other people like you or I as franchisees to open Lemon Sweet stands in exchange for that small 10% fee. Now, another piece of the legal form of a business is this idea of incorporations. Organizations must think about where to incorporate and the corporate charter. Did you know the most common place for businesses to incorporate is actually Delaware? It has very friendly business regulations, and while a business may be incorporated in Delaware, they can have offices and headquarters in another state. So you'll find many businesses are actually incorporated in Delaware, even with headquarters and other offices. Well, I'm just going to zoom in quickly here so you can see an example of what a charter might look like. Now, registering your business if you decide to use one of the legal forms that requires registration. Okay, not a sole proprietorship or a partnership. You've decided to be a limited liability company. To register a new business in Maryland, you want to go to the SStat site. And again, you saw this earlier, but you'll see it's very easy to do. And generally, they just need information about the name of the business, sort of the mission of the business, the address so they know where to find you. You know, who's going to be responsible, the resident agent of the business, and some signatures in that regard. Maryland actually has a fully electronic process for this now. If you'd like, they can do it in an express fashion really quickly. But it's pretty easy to get your business formed under an LLC or an LLP if you're interested in doing so. Now, our last topic for today is this idea of what happens when businesses join forces. Companies merge or acquire other companies to gain complementary products, attain new markets or distribution channels, and realize more efficient economies of scale. Today we'll talk about a merger, acquisition, and joint venture. Under a merger, you'll see a combination of two or more firms to form one company. In a vertical merger, you'll see that they combine firms at different levels of production, whereas in a horizontal merger, they're joining firms in the same industry. For example, Exxon might come together with Mobil, or Sirius with XM Radio. A conglomerate will actually combine firms that are totally unrelated, okay, but it could be something where it's going to be complementary in some way. An acquisition's a little different. Here there's a procedure in which one firm actually purchases the property and assumes the obligations, the debts of another business. A great example of that is with Facebook that many of you may be familiar with, and their purchase of Instagram, the popular photo sharing application. They purchased this for about $1 billion in cash and stock. For more information on this purchase and another recent purchase Facebook made of WhatsApp for $19 billion, you may consider clicking on this link. Okay. Again, an acquisition, it's one company really just buying another, like you might buy a product, right? And they're taking on then, hopefully, some good things with that purchase as well as the obligations. A joint venture is where we see a partnership between companies for a very specific person. A wonderful example of this is the video streaming site some of you may use called Hulu. This is a joint venture of News Corp, which owns Fox, Disney, which owns ABC, and Comcast, which owns NBC, and it's been really successful. The idea here is that they're able to offer more TV programming on one site through Hulu by combining together. If we only had Disney, we'd only have ABC and some of the Disney films, and we'd be missing some of the other content like Fox that some of us might like to watch. This allows a centralized place where we can access a lot of the TV programming we're interested in, even though it belongs to different companies, because they've come together to offer it together through Hulu. So hopefully you've learned a little bit today about different forms of business ownership, organizations, and businesses coming together. It's a lot of information, but you will see there were a lot of helpful resources there, such as the SBA.gov site, as well as some advantages and disadvantages listed of the different legal forms of business, some more information on franchising, and a little bit more information on what happens when businesses join forces, understanding more about mergers, acquisitions, and joint ventures. I hope you save this. You can save the link to the Prezi for the future in case you decide to open your own business. And please take advantage of the free resources available to you through SBA.gov. Thank you.